Hello, space enthusiasts! Buckle up, because what we're about to dive into is nothing short of monumental. Artemis 2 is NASA's first crewed flight since Apollo, and this mission is about to make history. 4 astronauts will climb aboard the most powerful rocket ever built by NASA, the Space Launch System, SLS. Imagine that. This colossal rocket will carry them all the way around the moon and back, marking the start of humanity's return to lunar exploration. The countdown is set for April 1st, but let's be clear, we're not here to marvel at the lunar flyby or watch those stunning glory shots of the moon. No, today we're talking about the critical systems that will keep those astronauts safe when things go sideways, because space is unforgiving. One failure and it could be over in an instant. Now, let's be real. The space shuttle, despite its many triumphs, never had a dedicated launch escape system. When things went wrong during a launch, astronauts on the shuttle had to rely on the shuttle's engines and wings. There was no rocket-powered escape. Artemis 2 is different. This mission is built with multiple layers of protection, and we're going to break down all of them. We'll explore everything from the emergency egress system, which could save lives before the rocket even launches, to the sophisticated abort modes that kick in if something goes wrong mid-flight. These astronauts will be safer than any crew before them. And in the bigger picture, this isn't just about Artemis 2. It's about setting the standards for all future crewed missions, whether it's to the moon or beyond. But why is all of this necessary? What makes Artemis 2 different from what we've seen in previous missions? We'll discuss that in depth, and here's the kicker. Many of these safety systems are not just new ideas, they are based on lessons learned from Apollo. If we are going to send humans back to the moon, the key is not just building the most powerful rocket, it's ensuring that rocket is safe enough to protect astronauts in every possible scenario. And that's exactly what Artemis 2 aims to prove. We'll dive into all the emergency systems that are built into SLS and the Orion spacecraft that will carry the crew. These systems cover everything from emergencies on the launch pad to worst-case scenarios in space. What's more, these systems are based on rigorous testing, refinement, and most importantly, real-world lessons learned over decades of space exploration. But as we move forward, we need to ask, is this level of safety going to be enough for what comes next? Will Artemis 2 succeed in keeping astronauts safe? Or will unforeseen challenges make it harder than expected? These are the questions that will shape the future of space travel. By the end of this series, we'll explore how Artemis 2 stacks up to Apollo and even the modern-day SpaceX Starship, which also aims to carry astronauts into deep space. Can we rely on the same methods we used for Apollo? Or has technology and safety evolved so much that we need a new way forward? The answers could shape the entire trajectory of human space exploration. Stay with me as we explore this cutting-edge technology, the systems behind Artemis 2's success, and why it might just be the most important mission of our time. Now that we've set the stage, let's dive into the safety features that make Artemis 2 not just another mission, but a leap forward in crewed spaceflight. The SLS rocket isn't just big, it's powerful, and with that power comes the responsibility to protect the astronauts at all costs. We all know that space is a hostile environment, and the margin for error is razor thin. That's why the safety systems on Artemis 2 are designed to handle any emergency scenario, from the moment the crew steps onto the mobile launcher to the moment they splash down back on Earth. Let's start with the emergency egress system, an unsung hero that kicks in before the engines even roar to life. The crew will climb aboard the mobile launcher platform, a towering 375 feet in the air, with the SLS rocket fueling up below them. This is where things could go very wrong, very fast. The SLS is packed with millions of gallons of volatile cryogenic fuel. fuel that could cause a disaster if something goes wrong. In a worst-case scenario, if there's a fire, a toxic leak, or any medical emergency, the crew needs to get out fast. Enter the emergency egress system. 4 large, bright yellow baskets, each roughly the size of a small SUV, are stationed at the crew access arm level. In an emergency, these baskets act as the crew's ticket to safety. The astronauts will hop into these baskets, following clear, brightly lit arrows, and then zip down a 1,335-foot slide wire cable to the ground below. Armored emergency vehicles will be waiting to whisk the crew away to a nearby safe bunker. NASA has made it a point to test this system relentlessly to ensure that the entire process from the moment the hatch pops open to the time the crew reaches safety takes place in under 2 minutes. This system wasn't available for Artemis 1 because it's designed specifically for crewed missions, and it's one of the many new safety protocols built for Artemis 2. And though no NASA mission has ever needed a ground egress system during countdown, Artemis 2 is prepared for the worst. Once the crew is secured inside Orion and the countdown reaches its final moments, the next level of protection engages the Launch Abort System, or LAS. This is a huge leap forward from previous missions, providing something the shuttle never had: an escape mechanism that isn't reliant on the shuttle's engines. The LAS is a 4-foot-tall tower bolted right on top of the Orion capsule. This system is a puller design, meaning it pulls the crew away from danger rather than pushing them out of harm's way like other designs. When the countdown hits critical moments, the abort motor fires, producing a staggering 400,000 pounds of thrust. This force is almost as much as an entire Raptor engine, and it's enough to yank the entire Orion crew module away from an exploding SLS rocket in just a few seconds. The sheer power of this system can accelerate the capsule to 17 Gs, well beyond the human tolerance limit, for just a few seconds, but enough to ensure the astronauts are pulled to safety. Once the abort motor does its job, the attitude control motor kicks in. This system is made up of 8 small thrusters that steer the capsule and ensure it's not tumbling out of control. After that, the jettison motor, provided by L3 Harris, fires to detach the entire abort tower, allowing the Orion capsule to deploy its parachutes and make a safe splashdown in the Atlantic Ocean. This whole process takes place in mere minutes and is a direct descendant of Apollo's emergency escape systems. But don't be fooled, this isn't just a copy of the Apollo system. It's a refined 21st century version of that classic technology designed to deal with the realities of modern spaceflight. But the safety features don't stop there. Artemis 2 has even more built-in protection once the launch abort system has done its job. While the LAS ensures the crew's survival in the first critical moments of ascent, the mission doesn't rely solely on that. The whole system is built around redundancy. There's always a backup plan, and that's crucial for the mission's success. Once the LAS is jettisoned and the rocket has gained some altitude, the in-flight cryogenic propulsion stage, ICPS, takes over. This upper stage has its own set of abort capabilities, and it can take over if necessary. If something goes wrong after the LAS has been used, the ICPS can pull Orion to safety, ensuring the crew can escape the danger zone even at higher altitudes. Then there's the emergency detection system, which is another critical part of the mission's safety net. This system is designed to monitor every aspect of the rocket's performance in real time. It's constantly assessing the situation, looking for anomalies that might signal an impending failure. If the system detects anything that's not right, it can trigger an automatic abort, sending the crew away from danger long before the situation gets out of control. The system is set up to trigger abort modes based on specific scenarios, like if the rocket's performance falters during ascent or if there's any structural issue with the SLS. These abort modes provide the crew with multiple options depending on the situation. For instance, there's the abort to orbit mode, which is designed to place the crew in a safe but less than optimal orbit if an emergency occurs. From there, they can figure out the next steps, whether that's trying to return to Earth or waiting for further assistance. Then, there's the targeted abort mode, which is similar to what the space shuttle used for transatlantic aborts. In this case, the crew would be safely guided to an emergency landing, even if they are far from the launch site. This is the kind of foresight NASA has incorporated into Artemis 2's design, layer after layer of redundancy, to ensure that if something goes wrong, the crew has every possible chance of survival. The final piece of the puzzle is the flight termination system, a built-in safety mechanism that ensures that if the worst happens and the rocket becomes uncontrollable, it can be safely destroyed to prevent it from causing further harm. This system is vital in situations where there is no other option but to terminate the flight. So, what makes Artemis 2's approach to safety so much more advanced than its predecessors? Well, let's take a look back at the space shuttle. The shuttle, while a technological marvel, never had a dedicated launch escape system like Artemis 2. There were abort modes, like return to launch site or abort once around, but those relied entirely on the shuttle's own engines and wings. In the first few moments of flight, the shuttle was essentially a sitting duck. If something went wrong on the pad or during launch, there was no reliable way to escape the danger. Unfortunately, we saw the tragic consequences of this limitation during the Challenger disaster, where the crew had no escape system in place. NASA learned the hard way that if you're sitting atop millions of pounds of fuel, you need a rocket-powered escape system, not just a reliance on the shuttle's engines. And that's exactly what Artemis 2 provides. It's taken everything NASA learned from the shuttle era and built a robust escape system to keep astronauts safe during those critical moments after launch. But here's where the conversation turns interesting. SpaceX's Starship, which is set to be a key player in future crewed missions to the moon and beyond, takes a very different approach. SpaceX doesn't have a traditional launch abort system like Artemis 2. Instead, they focus on making the entire rocket so reliable that astronauts don't need an escape system at all. Starship's design philosophy is based on the idea that the rocket itself will be robust enough to prevent any catastrophic failures. While this is an innovative approach, it raises some significant questions. Can SpaceX's Starship provide the same level of safety as Artemis 2, which has layers of redundancies built in? SpaceX has certainly proven that their Crew Dragon capsule, with its Super Draco engines, can offer a robust abort system. But Starship is a whole new beast. If something goes wrong on the launch pad or early in the flight, will the crew aboard Starship have enough time to react? Until we see a fully human-rated Starship capable of meeting NASA's strict safety standards, Artemis 2's approach seems like the safer bet. But safety isn't just about abort systems, it's about the entire design philosophy of a mission. And this brings us back to a crucial difference between Apollo and Artemis 2, deep space abort capabilities. Apollo missions had a unique advantage in this area. They were equipped with a Service Propulsion System, SPS, a powerful engine capable of performing a retrograde burn and flipping the spacecraft back to Earth if something went wrong during the trans-lunar coast. The SPS generated 20,500 pounds of thrust, and if the crew was in danger after the trans-lunar injection, they could fire the engine to return to Earth immediately, bypassing the moon entirely. In contrast, Orion's European Service Module, which powers Artemis 2, only produces about 6,000 pounds of thrust, roughly one-third the power of Apollo's SPS. This means that while Orion can still make course corrections, it doesn't have the same raw power to make a sudden return to Earth if something goes wrong. Instead, Artemis 2 uses a free return trajectory, meaning that if anything goes wrong during the translunar course, the spacecraft will naturally swing back to Earth without needing a massive engine burn. While this system is safer in many ways and more efficient, it doesn't offer the same immediate escape capabilities that Apollo had. NASA made the decision to prioritize lighter systems and mission flexibility over brute force, but it's still a calculated trade-off. This is the kind of compromise that future missions will need to evaluate carefully. If something goes wrong halfway to the moon, the crew may not have the luxury of a powerful instant turnaround. Instead, they'll rely on the free return trajectory to get them home safely, an approach that is still effective but not as immediate as Apollo's direct abort capability. Now, as we approach the final stretch, let's discuss one of the most important phases of any lunar mission, the actual landing. This is where the safety systems on Artemis 2 and the Apollo missions truly diverge. While Apollo had a remarkable system for aborting a lunar landing in case of failure, Artemis 2 doesn't quite have the same redundancy when it comes to the lunar landing stage. Apollo's lunar module, LM, was equipped with two separate engines, a descent propulsion system for landing and an ascent propulsion system for liftoff. If something went wrong during the descent, the astronauts could hit the abort button and the ascent stage engine would immediately fire, launching them back into lunar orbit. This dual-engine system was an example of true dissimilar redundancy if the primary engine failed. The backup was there to save the day. Now, let's fast forward to Artemis 2. The spacecraft designed to land on the moon in the future, whether it's SpaceX's Starship or the Blue Moon, lander operates quite differently. Unlike Apollo, where the descent and ascent engines were separate, the modern systems are relying on the same engine for both functions. SpaceX's Starship, for instance, uses its 6 Raptor engines for both the descent and ascent stages. While SpaceX has built in a significant amount of engine-out redundancy, this design means that if the entire propulsion system fails, there's no backup. This creates a major vulnerability. If one or more Raptor engines fail during descent, there is no other engine to back up the system. The astronauts are relying entirely on the reliability of the Raptor engines. It's a risky strategy, but one that SpaceX has embraced due to their philosophy of reusability and simplifying systems. On the other hand, the Apollo system gave astronauts the security of knowing that if the descent engine failed, the ascent engine would still be functional, and vice versa. This is a stark contrast, and it raises important questions about the risks associated with future lunar landings. Will astronauts be willing to trust a single-engine system when their lives are at stake? NASA has already required a robust abort-to-orbit capability for the Starship lunar lander, but even with this redundancy, the lack of a secondary independent engine system raises concerns. If there is a catastrophic failure of the propulsion system, the crew would have no way to abort the mission and return to safety. In comparison, Artemis 2 takes a more cautious approach. The Orion spacecraft's design ensures that the crew has multiple ways to safely return to Earth if anything goes wrong, from the launch to the deep space phase. However, the future lunar landing mission design will have to address the lack of redundancy and ensure that the risks are mitigated effectively before astronauts set foot on the lunar surface. Finally, we can't ignore the moon landing deniers who still claim that the Apollo landings were faked. The ascent stage engine on the lunar module is often cited by these individuals as evidence of a staged event, as it seemed to ascend too quickly and without visible fire. However, those of us who understand real physics know that the lunar module's ascent stage used a high-thrust hypergolic engine designed for rapid acceleration, and with the moon's low gravity, it worked exactly as intended. The absence of visible flames in space Simple, there's no air in space for combustion create the familiar fire we see on Earth. The moon landings were real, and the systems that made them possible were brilliantly engineered. But as we continue to push forward into the next era of lunar exploration, the lessons from Apollo are more critical than ever. Abort systems and safety measures aren't about admitting failure, they're about protecting the lives of the astronauts who are willing to risk it all for humanity's progress. They are the reason we can keep pushing the frontier of space without turning every launch into a potential tragedy. As we look to Artemis 2 and beyond, NASA is ensuring that we don't repeat the mistakes of the past. The safety measures on Artemis 2 are a direct result of decades of learning and innovation, all aimed at keeping astronauts safe. However, we also need to be mindful of the innovations being pursued by SpaceX and other private companies. Can they match NASA's rigorous safety standards? And if something goes wrong, will the astronauts be able to survive? So here's the big question. If Artemis 2 fails, if there's a major delay or even a scrubbed launch, does that open the door for China to win the race to the moon? China's ambitious target for a crewed lunar landing by 2030 is within reach, and their steady progress in landing technology, rover missions, and lunar samples is impressive. Meanwhile, Artemis 4, slated for 2028, may struggle to meet that date if Artemis 2 experiences significant setbacks. A major failure could set back NASA's timeline, allowing China to take the lead in the lunar race, although the US still holds the advantage in overall space exploration capabilities. However, one failure doesn't hand China the moon, it just gives them more time. Artemis 2's success is crucial for the future of lunar exploration, and whether the US or China reaches the moon first, it's the continued international collaboration and advancements in technology that will ultimately define the next chapter of human space exploration. Now, I want to hear from you. What do you think? If Artemis 2 faces a failure, will it delay NASA's mission, or will it simply push the timeline into the 2030s? And who do you think will plant the next flag on the moon? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, smash that like button, and be sure to subscribe for more space updates. And as always, check the description for ways to support the channel so we can continue bringing you the latest in space exploration. Until next time, stay curious and stay angry about space.